Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bitchuation Room on a Frantastic Friday. Hope you're feeling well, you're doing good, despite the utter collapse of the empire. I wish that we could just be, I don't know, this is not really, but like, if this is the implosion of the Death Star and we could all just be Ewoks and, sing our little song, that'd be tight. But like, sadly, we don't got that planet yet. Thank you so much for being here, for pressing play, for tuning in live. Make sure, by the way, that you're liking and sharing the stream right now, that you are ringing the bell on the Bitchuation Room so you know whenever we go live. Sometimes we go live a little bit early. Wednesday, my fault. We did go live a little bit early. Made you look. And thank you so much to the people who make this show happen, which are you. You people, specifically the members on YouTube and Twitch and the patrones. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. On Wednesday, we had an excellent episode. And we talked about the 500-pound bear. We talked about Kendrick Lamar, and the protester in the halftime show. It was good. It was good. It was robust. And thank you everyone for going there with me on my thoughts on Kendrick. Even though I did get the name of the album wrong. It's Damn, not DNA. But thank you to everyone who's become a patron. You guys know right after this, we're having our AMA. That's right. Ask me anything. I've got tons of questions. But if you do want to become a patron to ask a question, you get access to these AMAs. There's some that we've done in the past too. You can check those out. There are all kinds of reasons. We've got chats over there, guest suggestions. I do my best to try and book all of your guest suggestions, and discounts on merch, discounts on our sponsor, Sunset Lake CBD. So 25% off over there, and just a way to support this small labor of love for the left and for you all, and to create this space. So thank you so much in advance. And with that, you guys, I have a guest and I'm super excited to talk to her. We are obviously in the wake of the LA fires, in the wake of so many not natural, but very much man-made disasters, experiencing the full, very real impact of carbon in the atmosphere and climate chaos. And now we have Donald Trump. And I think I'm not the only one who is quite concerned with this moment, and also all of the ways that even the small progress that has been pushed through in the last 4 years by the Biden administration is quickly and very easily being rolled back. And so with me, she is the co-chair of the Climate and Community Institute. I'm really excited to welcome to the program Thea Riofrancos. Thea, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thea, you have a recent op-ed. I mean, recent, like a month ago, right before Trump was inaugurated. This op-ed that I was really fascinated by. I could just bring it up here and show folks. Everyone needs to read it, and put a link to it in the description. Called "Biden Left Us with a Prius Economy. It's Time for Something Different." And I really want to, unpack what you mean. I think I can guess, but for those who don't know, like in this article, you really talk about the need for green economic populism versus this Prius economy. Can you just tell me what you meant when you co-wrote this awesome op-ed?
Totally. Thank you so much. And it is true that under the Biden government, we got the US's most ambitious climate policy ever. But it's also true that the ceiling is the floor. I mean, meaning that there was no prior climate policy of merit, or of note at the national level in the US. Of course, we have California doing some policy, New York, and I don't want to downplay that, but we never had federal climate policy. So this is our first real one. And there were some, real advances in it, right? It unlocked a lot of tax cuts and consumer incentives for both businesses and households to kind of go green, right? To produce those EVs and to buy those EVs. Like a lot of it was really about, that type of green consumption. But, at the same time, when you ask ordinary Americans, have you ever heard of the IRA, which is this wonky name, Inflation Reduction Act, which is due to conflicts with Manchin and trying to win him over, right? So it's not even called like ambitious climate policy. So people don't even know what it is. So, and we have to think, I think, about messaging and how these messages reach the public. So part of it is just like people don't know what it is. And if you ask them, they either don't know what it is, they think it's negative, a small percentage thinks it's positive. And so, Trump dismantling it now or attempting to is also not surprising in a way. Like a bill that ordinary Americans did not feel reflected their interests or had not heard of is of course more vulnerable to Republican attacks than a bill that had mass, enthusiastic support. And then we dig in a little deeper and think like, okay, why haven't most Americans heard of it? Why is it not like, if the wonks think it's so great, like why do ordinary folks not?
Yeah.
And then you look at the numbers and it's like, whoa, only 3% of Americans have even taken advantage of its tax credits. And when we dig deeper, it's like the majority that have are well off, right? And that's also not surprising in the sense that you need to be an asset owner, be someone who owns a car, owns a house, that type of thing, in order to be even in the position of like making your house more energy efficient,
Right.
or having that means to like invest in what is a new asset, an EV, and it's pretty expensive. Yes, you can knock $7,500 off because of the IRA, but we're talking about something that's $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. And the average, many Americans like don't have like $500 in their bank account, right? And so when we look at the cost of living crisis and the popular discontent, and then we look at a bill that, while it maybe had good motives for sure, and it definitely has like helped initiate a lot of new like factory production of batteries, of solar panels in the US. But when we look at how it affected the people who are struggling the most, and also the people who Democrats obviously need to win back in order to have a winning coalition, it did not do that work. It didn't do the work of like creating like kind of popular options for ordinary people to participate in this new green economy.
Yeah.
And there are things that could have been done differently, but it's not about rewriting history. It's thinking like, what can we do next time when we have that opportunity, or right now at the state and local level where progressives might be in power?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really like, even just knowing that there was a tax rebate you could possibly take advantage of, even if you were in a position to, let's say retrofit your home or have like a heat pump. I was really excited about that. I'm a renter, but like I was like, I didn't eventually ask my, landlord, but I was like, you could get a rebate and get a heat pump, and then we could have central air because that's better, for the environment and also effective and whatnot. And so, but that's not going to happen. Like, number one, she's not going to do that. But like, it's just like, yes, only some people found out about it or were in the position to implement it. And in effect, couching everything as a tax rebate and in a tax scheme and incentives, it's still a market-based, not real solution, but sort of fix it. But what do you think? Because I think the unspoken thing here is also about messaging. What is actually breaking through to people to get folks excited about something like a Green New Deal or green economic populism? What are your thoughts on like messaging and what's the first foot forward on that?
Yeah. So I think first of all, you have to try. Right. I mean, like the first step is like really prioritizing, not just messaging in this like, okay, we're going to put out a press release, we're going to have a press conference, which again are only the high info news consuming people that are even like tapped into that. But, getting at more ordinary people means that you need to be on TV, you need to be on TikTok, you need to be out there. Like Biden famously or infamously held like very few press conferences, and we can ask why that was, but I won't go there, right?
we all know.
We know the answer, right? It wasn't ideal when he did, and he might have done damage at times to his own policies. But, even given his age and the fumbles, like he could have had spokespeople, he could have had other folks that were carrying that baton of messaging beyond him. And like, I just to compare, Latin America is a place where I've done a lot of research. And what we often see with progressive governments there is that they're like on the radio, on the airwaves, on TV, like every day. And the reason is the media there is even more right wing. So they know, because it's controlled by like 5 wealthy families in a lot of countries, right? They know that they cannot trust that media to even get out the most basic facts, let alone like supportive arguments for their policies. So they are like flooding the airwaves, right, with their own, messaging, with sometimes long speeches a president sometimes interviewing a guest, recommending a book, like just really getting into the kind of fabric of discourse and like how people think about things, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's clear from those type of international examples that, or even going back to FDR and the fireside chats, right? We have our own
Yes.
examples, or Obama's like oratory, which, you know, I'm not put aside my critiques of his administration, but he communicated to people, right?
Right.
And so I think there's that. But we also know, despite you and I being involved in like putting stuff out in media and writing and whatnot, that messaging only takes you so far. You also need to have those bases of contact in unions and social movements and community orgs, like people that are really doing the work in their communities to make the messages land and to make them feel real to people, right? And that's another place where we saw like a real disconnect with the Biden government.
Yeah, I mean, green is right there. You just like green means more money for you and a greener planet. Like, I don't know,
Yeah,
like I'm trying to just like
totally.
the messaging around like, you know, even when we break up like these monopolies, energy monopolies, when we step to them, when we like, this is all about lowering your
Mhm.
energy costs and your
Totally.
electric bill, your gas bill, because there's no reason it should be this high, on and on and on, like that kind of stuff. And
Totally.
again, it's the failure to name that enemy, right? Biden also
Yes.
oversaw one of the biggest, outputs in fossil fuel exploration and oil exploration or whatever exploitation. So it's like, what are we doing here? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the key to populism as a political strategy is being really clear who the enemies are, right? In part because the right wing is always scapegoating the wrong people, right? They're scapegoating folks that are trans or migrants, and they're pointing the blame that way to distract us from, you know, who obviously controls the means of production and who's obviously benefiting. But the left needs to kind of take the hint around how powerful it is to be clear about who our enemies are, right? They're not migrants. They're not our trans neighbors. They are the wealthy. They're the 1%. And I think the fossil fuel executives is a key place where Biden simply could not lean into calling them out
yeah,
because, as you said, the US, you know, under his government is like undergoing a fossil fuel boom, incentivized by his own government's policies. So it would be awkward, to say the least, to be like, let me call out the CEO of Exxon when Exxon is benefiting roundly from Biden's own policies,
yeah.
right? And that put him in a corner. But, you know, regardless, we do need to think of ways of like, how do we create our coalition and who are our real opponents here?
And it's the same thing with like, it's funny because I hate giving the right credit, but the right identifies the people and the messages that they want to fight,
Hmm.
whether or not liberals or the Democratic Party lift those messages up. Case in
Totally.
point, the Green New Deal was never implemented, didn't actually happen. Let's implement it. But of course, Fox News and now Donald
Mhm.
Trump is equating the Inflation Reduction Act with the Green New Deal. And everyone's like, oh, we got rid of the Green New Scam. Oh, we got rid of the Green New Scam. It's the same way they go after AOC. It's because they know that actually that's an adversary. To be quite honest, that's
Totally.
kind of fun. That's kind of like entertaining. That's actually kind of like ballsy and out there. And like people are going to watch it. People are going to, it's a radical idea that, that they want to tussle with. And so let's give it to them. Let's give
Yeah.
them that fight around messaging, around, we could talk about the economy, who it's going to benefit. But again, Democrats have walked away from
They're
that
hesitant. They're
for
hesitant to
hesitance.
do it. And like,
Mhm.
you know, I think one difference, I just want to reiterate what you're saying because it's so important, is like, in my mind, the Republicans understand that their base is a source of power. It's not the only source of power. Their donors, you know, the whole business nexus around them, but they understand that if they can mobilize people by kind of triggering their sentiments of hatred often, or anger, or grievance. And I want to say that, you know, some of those could be valid, like vague grievances around the economy, but then like the Republican kind of messaging puppet masters like direct them towards the scapegoats, right? But
Right.
regardless, they're speaking to the fact that people are dissatisfied. They're mobilizing their base. Where it seems to me that honestly, at this point, Democrats are like afraid or actually hostile to their base. Like they
Mhm.
don't think, like, even recently we have that Axios article that just came out where Democratic leadership is like mad at Move On. It's like Move On is like the liberal base. They're not socialists. They're not like crazy out there people from the Democratic perspective, right? And so, you know, it's just like, why aren't you trying to actually get your base angry at Trump? Why
Yep.
aren't you happy that your base is flooding offices with calls to encourage members of Congress to really go after Trump? But they treat their base with disdain, and then a lot follows from that in terms of messaging and strategy.
Absolutely. I I guess I am really concerned because we've seen under Democratic leadership and Republican leadership just a criminalization of climate activism. Whether it's Stop Cop City, which was, has over obviously an overlap with, the either abolitionist or prison justice or criminal justice reform movements, to the Dakota Access Pipeline, obviously Keystone, on and on and on. And it only seems like it's getting worse. And you having reported a lot in Latin America, I mean, truly the people in the crosshairs of the state are always climate activists because they are this front to capital. But I guess I'm just asking, like, wondering, like, are you concerned with like new levels of repression as Trump tries to, run roughshod over communities to build new pipelines or whatever else he wants to do?
Absolutely. And I'm like, I mean, I'm super concerned because we haven't even started to see this yet, right? We're
Yeah.
in the beginnings of what, folks much more mainstream than I am are calling a constitutional crisis, right? So like we're already seeing Trump totally like exceeding what are supposed to be the checks on executive power, right? So there's just no telling how bad things will get. And, we have a lot of examples, both from the federal government, but also from state governments where we have Republicans in control of the state, both using violence directly. Think about Standing Rock, think about the Keystone stuff, right? Like all of those protests against pipelines, folks did that under real risk and there was real violence, right?
Yeah.
And it's only gotten worse because the Republican Party has only gotten more radical and violent since then.
Mhm.
In the meantime, there are states, as I was saying, with Republican governors and legislatures that have actually passed laws criminalizing protest against what
Mhm.
they're now calling critical infrastructure. So if you protest a pipeline, you're now like, you're protesting critical infrastructure and the state can deploy more force against you, right? So there are all these models. At the same time, we also see something like just as scary, which is the way that MAGA and Trump licenses vigilante violence, right? So it's
Mhm.
not just the state, it's also these folks that get in their SUV and like ram into protesters and then, the protesters were protesting critical infrastructure. So actually the vigilante was helping to protect us. So we're not going to prosecute. I mean,
Exactly,
the
right.
ways that
Or
it's
we're
not.
gonna appoint them to,
Oh gosh. Yeah.
didn't Daniel Penny, a
Yes,
guy who,
100%.
yeah,
That's such a great point, right? So we're actually elevating vigilantes to like be inside the state, have access to forms of state power, and it's really concerning. But and that's amid other threats, of course, like the dismantling of the existing climate legislation we have, climate regulations, climate science is being like defunded by the day. I have colleagues in the UC system elsewhere in the country in public institutions that are seeing their programs evaporate. Their grad students have no funding anymore, right? This is happening like hour by hour. And I think that, we should be really real about the threats and be honest about them, but also not be scared into submission, which
yeah,
is like the most typical authoritarian playbook is to be really overwhelming and kind of spectacularly performative
yeah,
about the way that you try to dismantle civil society so that then at a certain point you don't even have to carry through on everything. People just become scared, and we already see that, unfortunately. I don't want to downplay some of the protests that have happened in DC and elsewhere, but we're not seeing the same response to Trump. I mean, I
sure.
was at the J20 protest, of his inauguration. I was at the Women's March the next day. Like I was there among, millions of others, like just, like experiencing all these protests under Trump's first term. And I'm hoping we get something like that. Because we need to really mobilize again. We need to take
Agreed.
stock of the threats, but not like be cowed into submission by them.
Yeah, and I think in part it is actually because the Democratic Party was caught so flat-footed, more so than in I mean, I actually think that it's just the, "Oh, this again." Like, you lost in 2016. It seemed much more sort of astounding at that time. Now this movement is demonstrably worse, and
Yep.
you somehow lose again, and so it's this crisis of legitimacy and crisis of these of honestly, the people who really believe that we can have a Prius economy and still stop the worst ills of climate chaos, which we
Right.
know is not true. And so it's sort of these, you can't have a halfway measures party. Um, and I guess, on along those lines, like, what do you feel like is maybe back to our initial discussion, like, is a galvanizing
Yeah.
message when it comes to climate just briefly, here in LA, you've got Democrats scrambling over themselves to say, yes, we're going to rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, but no one is actually saying this is how we're going to be more climate prepared in the
Yeah.
future. This is how we're going to hold these corporations accountable who may have not shut off electricity during 100-mile-an-hour winds in, 9 months of drought. This is how we're going to protect you. No more middlemen, on and on. You're
Right.
not seeing that. You're seeing,
No.
oh, yay, we're just going to everybody build.
Right.
Build.
Right. And we're not, and it's even worse. I mean, that's all true. And when we look at who populates these commissions that are the like rebuilding commission, right? It's like the big developers, it's like big corporations, because those are also their donors. I don't want to sound conspiratorial because it's not a conspiracy, it's a power relationship, right? And so it's not, when we were saying about how Democrats are hesitant, there are structural reasons why they are, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to break through that, which is why I think it's always important to run more left-wing progressive candidates in primaries, whether they win or not, like just to put a little heat on these people, right? And so that they're not just answering to their donors. But there are definitely ways, and there's like been message testing on this stuff. We have evidence. It's not just me just like being utopian. Like there are ways to speak to people about climate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the first step of messaging or just organizing is to meet people where they're at. Right. And sometimes people are already like enmeshed in the climate crisis, like folks that just had to relocate out of California. Like, sometimes people are already there, but sometimes
Mm-hmm.
that's not top of mind. Top of mind is
Mm-hmm.
the grocery bill, or it's like, childcare, or it's like I'm working 2 jobs, or it's the minimum wage is not high enough, like things like that. And so if that's your point of entry, that's your point of entry. And we need our climate policies to speak to that, right? It shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be intention. It's not like, oh, people care about the economy or they care about their cost of living. How are we going to get them to care about climate? It's like, well, first of all, those are connected, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like, why are utility bills going up? Why are there all these food and energy shocks, right? Why is home insurance going up, which trickles down to renters in very unequal ways, right?
Yes.
Like, why is the cost of living? It's not only climate. There's geopolitics, there's supply chains. I'm not trying to simplify, but there's a way to pretty straightforwardly show that the climate crisis is making the cost of living worse, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
one thing you can say to folks, but you also have to lead with the policy interventions. Like, don't just say affordable housing, which is a thing Democrats love to say.
Yeah.
And then it's like a tax break to a developer is affordable housing, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not like, how are we actually going to build publicly owned affordable housing that is actually in the public sector and meets people's needs? Like, how are we going to take the energy sector away from just profit making and profit maximization and the fossil fuel companies, right?
Yeah.
How are we going to deal with the issues of skyrocketing rent, or like skyrocketing utilities? Like all of these are things that I don't want to make it sound easy, but there are some policy levers starting at the local level in a lot of cases, going up to state, and okay, federal government's out of our hands for now, but we can model this stuff in places where we have progressives in power.
Yes.
And then ordinary people are smart. Like when I've done canvassing and knocked doors, people are not idiots. Like they're not they understand the material realities of why they're suffering. They may not understand how climate relates, but that's our job to make that clear and to make the policies kind of speak to both.
It's so funny. This is such a random thing. I might have said this story, but when Naomi Klein was on, she, always talks about democratization of the energy grid. And there's another way to it's almost like energy libertarianism, where it's like, I mean, not quite, because I do believe in like fuel standards and regulation and whatnot, but like, I was out in like Joshua Tree and there was a guy and he was like staying at this Airbnb and he had solar panels. And I was like, that's cool. Are you like dependent on that? He's like, no, we have to plug into the California grid. There's no way. We run it all through like SoCal gas or whatever and electric. Like there's no way that you with your solar panel can actually independently use the sun as a human on planet Earth and not be charged by some conglomerate for it. And it's like, that's so bipartisan / that's any person can identify that is an injustice and like very much works against, we're everyday people. We're just trying to use a solar panel.
Totally. I mean, utility companies are state sanctioned monopolies, right? And so there's a lot of ways that they can feel threatened by even just the fact that renewable energy is more distributed and kind of allows for, more kind of like, you can have the different scales of energy production. I'll put it that way, right? On the other hand, I will say that like, if you're low income, like you can't buy the solar panel, right? Which is like why we need that public grid and we need the public safety net, but it shouldn't be like a zero-sum game where like someone does have that solar panel, then like they're cut off, right? Like, so
Right,
that's a
right.
product of the way that we have these basically private monopolies. And that, that's putting a lot of power over this really important sector that's crucial for the climate change in these big companies that then are like, there's regulatory capture with the utility commission. So that's
Yeah.
a huge issue everywhere. I mean, you see these parallel cases from Texas to Rhode Island to California, like really similar dynamics.
I know, it is so funny where you're like, "Oh, you put solar panels in your house? Wow. Number 1, you have a house. Number 2, you basically had to do it's basically just a pat on the back. I mean,
Yeah.
we all know this. It's like it ultimately at the end of the day, it's like, cool, I'm, cutting down on my energy usage, but I had to invest a F ton of money
Mhm.
into even putting these on my house in the first place. I'm not saving that much, but I like feel better about myself.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
your virtue, it makes you feel virtuous. And again, like
it's
I
good, but it's such
right.
a high price tag to do that.
Totally. And it's honestly like, my partner and I had a Ford Focus that was like a decade old or more and died like a year ago. The transmission just went out. So we had to buy a new car because we live in a place, unfortunately, where I can't just use mass transit. I grew up in New York City. Like I didn't have a license till I was like 30 or 31. Like
Right.
I love to cycle and to take transit, but it's not a great option where I live. So we were getting a new car and it's like, okay, I guess we have to we're getting an EV because I'm not going to buy in 2023 or whenever it was, like, I'm not going to buy a gas car at this point in the climate
Mhm,
crisis. But,
mhm.
it's hard because the EVs are expensive. I did all this research. Like, I want to buy an EV that's affordable. I also want it to be union made. Like, I also want
Mm,
it to be small. Like, I don't want some Hummer. Like, and it turns out that there are very few options that like tick those boxes, let alone if I had less disposable income, like what I would even do, right? I just
sure.
buy a $5,000 used clunker, on a gas
Right.
powered car, like because it's not accessible to most
Yeah.
people, the green lifestyle at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I let you go, I do wanna talk to you about Latin American politics when it
Yeah.
comes to the climate because I am obsessed, and you spent, what was it, 5 years in Ecuador?
I
Um
spent like years across Ecuador, Chile. My family's from Argentina. So I've been, so I've had this long history of from family connections, but also just because it's such an inspiring and interesting region when it
Yes,
comes to environmental and climate politics. And
yes.
I don't want to simplify, right? I wrote a book about how actually the left can be quite divided in Latin America between those that want to
Plug
exploit
that book again
resources.
real quick.
Resource radicals. Yeah. So
Resource
that's a
radicals,
book
okay.
on that. And I've written like, easier to read essays, whatever your thing is, look at my website, theoriofrancos.com. I written a lot about this topic because it's fascinating, but it's also lessons for us in the US, right? If we were ever so lucky to have like a really progressive government, like what would we do with our oil reserves? Would we want to exploit them for the people, right? Because that's one version of leftism that I have respect for and I understand. There's another kind of more radical or environmentally radical movement in Latin America that's like, we don't want to extract this stuff anymore, right? So you have
Yeah.
a lot of indigenous movements, ecological movements that are really pushing for like, let's get our economies out of this trap of extractivism, as they call it, right? What's kind of interesting now is that you actually have some governments that are at least partly listening to these movements, right? So I want to just name, for example, Petro Gustavo, who's the president of Colombia, who
Mhm.
now has not issued new oil and gas licenses. Like Colombia, we may not know it, is an oil exporter, right? That's an important part of their economy. And
Yes.
they're still extracting oil. He's not like expropriating the stuff that's already happening, but he says no more new ones. And that's not a small feat for a government that's quite dependent on fossil fuel revenues, right?
Yeah.
And so he's trying to make steps, but what he really wants, which I think is an interesting idea, is a coalition of governments committed to no new fossil fuel exploration or extraction. And so he
Mhm.
understands that it's hard to do this in one country, right? And a country that's lower income and in the peripheries of the world economy, like they don't have a ton of power. And so they need to ally with other countries to kind of move that forward. But these are the kind of ideas that come out of the region because you have 500 years of colonialism and neocolonialism that really started with resource extraction. So people
Yes.
understand very well the relationship between extraction, capitalism, and colonialism. And I think for that reason, you have a lot of interesting social ideas about how to combat those forces.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important, you write about the pink tide and I'm fascinated by it. I lived in Buenos Aires for 5 years. I always have to
Mm.
say that. Everybody knows that. And I wrote a little bit there, but I was, you know, simultaneously just sort of in awe of how much Latin America, when it comes to climate policy and the economy, is both living in the past and the future.
Yes.
Like they have, you know, like land displacement is currently taking place. You know, this is rich land that doesn't have to necessarily be monocrop to
Mhm.
export to China. You know, this could be, you know, land that could feed the
Totally.
Argentine population, for example,
Right.
or any population.
Yeah.
You know, you look, obviously Haiti has got a different history, but same with that. You know, it's like after the earthquake, it was like, what about like, and Puerto Rico was like looking back at the land and the amount of
Absolutely.
displacement, which obviously has to do with a lot of indigenous rights too. I guess my question is, given, what are we on, COP 27, 8?
I think 30 is the next one.
Okay, so this, you know, UN climate
Yeah.
process that is supposed to keep us, you know, below 1.5 degrees Celsius, which have blown past.
Yeah.
You know, we've got these really morbid, you know, markers that we're hitting. Some massive glacier, I believe, just broke off this week. Forgot which one, but you know, these are really perilous times. And so when you have places like the global south that
Mhm.
are being thrust into this model of, yes, you know, global extractive capitalism, and yet they, like the Amazon, like Brazil, like, you know, Peru and Ecuador, are the lungs of the world.
Totally.
You know, do you see it possible for us to stave off the worst of climate change without paying these
Hmm.
countries
Yeah.
to stop extracting? Or do you think at this point, given how, you know, 30 years and not a lot of progress, these countries still haven't been paid by the biggest polluters, which is the, you know, global north, that it's like they're on their own, like the
Yeah.
movement has to come from them? I guess I'm curious about that.
Totally. No, I think it's both and you know, we had that proposal that first came out of Ecuadorian civil society and then was picked up by the Correa government and wasn't successful at the time, but exactly that, like pay us to not exploit oil in the Amazon, right? And
Yeah.
it was almost like that idea was ahead of its time in a way where I'm like, I wonder if it had happened like a few years later when there was even more global consciousness and more of these global commitments around climate, if he would have been able to move it a little bit forward. But that being said, the movement continued and they finally got a referendum that now is blocking oil. They're not getting the international support for it, right? But that's why I'm saying it's both and, right? Because that proposal came out of civil society and it was ultimately defended and codified through the action of movements, right? But that's, you know, when I was saying you can't do this in one country alone, I think part of it is about south to south connections, like global south governments allying to like increase their leverage against the global north, right? On
Yes.
all of these issues, protecting biodiversity, actually staying true to climate commitments, redistribution and climate finance, all of this stuff. But ultimately, like our globe is unequal. It was forged in inequality and it remains that way. The global south is still on the front lines beyond where we are at of the climate crisis and has the least resources to deal with it and was the least complicit in creating it, right? And so we do need to see it. It's hard to see now with so many right-wing governments in power in the US and Europe. You know, China's an interesting case that like is doing forms of investment in the global south, but you know, we could get into the kind of great power politics there. But
Sure.
regardless, like it's hard to, you know, Trump is not going to do this. He just dismantled USAID. Like that being said, I think we have to continue to push from below while we're not in power. And then when we have those openings of progressives in government, with a, you know, with government too, to actually, you know, be in solidarity with the global south. But I think it can start today with movements, with our international relationships, with solidarity across borders. We don't need to wait for the political opening to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm heartened, you know, the one bright spot, and I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I know he's not perfect, but having Lula back in power
Yeah.
in Brazil is kind of heartening, given that the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, I mean,
Mhm.
Russia, whatever, India
Right.
and China and South Africa, right, are these, you know, global South economies that, for me, I'm like, once the US like takes itself out of the picture,
Yeah.
it's almost this relief of like, well, good, we don't have to rely on these, like this dead weight
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
So what does the rest of the world do? And of course, again, if the authoritarians have their way, nothing.
Yeah.
But yes, I think Gustavo Petro and Lula could be offering another example, although I'm assuming Brazil is incredibly extractive in their
It
economy.
is, but I will say that under Lula, just like under the first Lula government, like deforestation is much lower than it was, when the right wing was in power, right? Or
Right.
Bolsonaro. So you make progress, but it's also true that soy and mining are like essential to Brazil's economy, and Lula's not really confronting some of those power holders, right? So that's why this issue of extraction is complex and like divides progressives in Latin America. But there's a lot of interesting kind of policies and ideas that come out of those debates, right?
Yeah.
Like the debates are not just antagonism, they're also like forcing people to think really rigorously about proposals. And that's why I think we can always turn to Latin America if we want to think about innovative policies and what the kind of, in a way, vanguard might be for ecology, for climate, for indigenous rights, for gender. I mean, the feminist movements, and speaking of Argentina, like they've achieved things like, starting from really Catholic, patriarchal, people talk about machismo, like it wasn't like an easy battle, right? But they have
No, and it
won.
just happened, of course, after
Yeah,
I left.
yeah,
No, but and I
they have
do
won
think
rights.
Millet has to be put situated in this backlash to the feminist movement,
100%, 100%, which on the one hand, that movement is vulnerable to figures like Millet, but it also shows the power that there is this reaction and pushback, right?
Yeah.
And the feminists in Argentina and Chile and Mexico have fought against regimes that are really right wing, in some cases authoritarian regimes. I mean, they have dealt with real violence and real risk, and they have stayed mobilized. And so,
Yeah.
again, if we want to think about how we're going to push back to Trump, to the Supreme Court, like let's take some lessons from south of the border, because they have really endured and actually won abortion rights that in many cases are more thorough than like anything that we've had in the US.
I 100% agree. Thank you so much, Thea Riofrancos. TheaRiofrancos.com. If you want to go check out her work and her awesome, again, I'll put this op-ed in the description. And there's just so much great writing that you've done over the years. So thank you so much. And gosh, please come back. I could talk to you for forever. I was like, well, we'll only do 20 minutes. And now it's like, oh yeah, it's 45. We're done. Bye.
I'm too chatty for that. Anyway, it was a pleasure, and I hope to do it again.
Yes, take good care. And thank you all for being here. Only the best people on the Bitchuation Room for you all. Thank you for diving in headfirst to this conversation. We need these conversations. We need these strategic, long look conversations, because otherwise we are going to die. We will get exhausted. But what she just said as she was on her way out is 100% true. Movements have done a lot more with a lot less, not just in this country, but especially around the world. The poverty, the inequality, it is a lot starker. I think a lot of what the United States suffers from is creature comforts and the ability to just kind of scroll and order on your Amazon. And I think we all need to carve out a little bit more time to actually get fucking involved. It's been 40 minutes. I think I can drop my first F-bomb. That being said, one of the things that makes it difficult to get involved is like making time to make a meal. Do you guys feel this? I don't. Today, I would like to make something nice for Valentine's Day. I have no idea what. We couldn't get a sitter, so I'm not going out. But I was very fortunate, and I had a Factor meal for lunch. That's right. I had blackened salmon with cauliflower grits, which sounds actually really good, and it was really good. Super, super flavorful. And Factor is a sponsor of this show today. They have, if you haven't tried them, chef-made gourmet meals that make eating real easy because you just pop it in the microwave. Dietitian approved, as you can tell from the cauliflower grits. Trying to help you fulfill your goals so you can feel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. Factor arrives fresh, fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. Can help you feel your best all day long with smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks, and more add-ons. I got some smoothies, are so good. Like the juices are incredible. Reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that can't be beat. Join me in thanking our newest sponsor, Factor, for sponsoring today's episode. You can get started at factormeals.com/Bitchuation50 off. That's BITCHUATION 50 OFF. Use the code Bitchuation50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. This is like, you really all should just do this. Like, do this now. 50% off. What are you waiting for? This is silly, stupid, the right move. Eat smart with Factor. Get factormeals.com/bitchuation off, bitchuation 50 off, and use code bitchuation 50 off to get your 50% off your first box plus free shipping. I did also just say that. So there you go. Once again, de nada. Thank you so much to some super chatters. Tinkle Tits McGee, which is just the funniest name ever. Thank you for the Frantifa bucks. Appreciate you. Robert says, in Democrats' defense, why would they want to help people who are never going to have enough money to bribe them? So, Robert, you say this, and I just want to like underscore what an interesting point this is, just briefly. Because I do want to get to a few stories, and then we have our Ask Me Anything after this. But in a lot of countries around the world, for example, in Argentina, voting is obligatory. So you have to vote. Now, you don't get like no one's chasing you down to vote, but like it's a legal requirement to vote. So, what does that mean? It means that actually money doesn't buy speech. And I don't think that obligatory voting would actually work in a country as like hell bent on its individualism as this is, but it makes the politicians actually pay attention to poor people who cannot bribe them with any money. Now, there are good sides to that, like they actually have to have a populist message because they know they're speaking to poor people, but also it's bad in that a lot of times this happens in Latin America a lot, where it's like you give folks like a free meal and a bus ride to the polling station and they vote for you, right? Or it's called clientelism, where you effectively like attach, your SNAP benefits to the political party specifically. So these things are very much tied up into, who you're voting for. Now, I think things like SNAP benefits are good, or, some kind of like basic meal basket. They call it canasta básica in Argentina. But that's what's interesting about when people have to vote. So yeah, food for thought. Tyler Biku, thanks for becoming a member. William McGregor. 83-year-old Bernie is going on an anti-oligarch tour to former blue districts while Dem leadership takes a vacation from a mini defeat. I love that he's going on this tour, by the way. Send me more info about that. Bernie, always flying coach to make sure that we know about the revolution. Now, here's what I want, and the AMA, I'm going to talk about this, about starting another party. I think Bernie needs to start another party that is period, end of story. We cannot and we do not have time to wait on these Democrats. So I'm curious. I want to talk more about that in the AMA because I got a few questions about it. Relatability is going to be extremely important in the next election cycle. It's not just about message, it's about who it's coming from as well. I totally agree with you. It's why, certain people like Sean Fain seem to cut through the noise, and people who speak simply and honestly and feel genuine. It's people people like obviously AOC and oh my god, why am I blanking on her name? Who's the other representative? I mean, well, you guys will tell me. Oddly Magical Brandy says the DNC shifted from labor base because of Clinton's corporate back campaign in 92. Since then, they drifted right, chasing big donors. Exactly. And Ariane Marshall, thanks for becoming a member. Bought my tickets to see the SAC show. Excited to see you and Matt or Chada Armada forever. Oh my God, Ariane. Yes, thank you for reminding me. Sacramento, Sunday, March 16th. Get your tickets. Me and Matt Lieb, francescafiorentini.com. Maybe I'll put the link in the description. I always say that, and then I'm like, I hope somebody's doing it. Hope it's there. But Ariane, excited to see you. And Q Peterson, my God, thank you for gifting memberships. Everybody snatch those up so you can get access to the AMA. Doug, thank you for your super sticker. Rachel Atwood, thank you for your, yes, it is Valentine's Day. Happy I wish we had some fun stories about like malfunctioning sex toys. I just need a fun malfunctioning sex toy story. But instead, we have stories of blatant effing corruption. So let's just say that this last week has been defined by Donald Trump opening his arms to corrupt politicians on the other side of the aisle if they will help him in doing mass deportations, right? That's what he's doing with foreign leaders. That's what he wants with Modi in India. And that is what he wants with disgraced yet somehow still current mayor of New York City, Eric Adams. And yes, Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine Crockett is who I was thinking of. But yeah, so Mayor Eric Adams, who this morning was on Fox and Friends being the most man who's currently being held hostage man. There's no other way to say this. He is on Fox and Friends with none other than border czar Tom Homan, who is sitting next to him, a little bit looking like he's his chaperone slash parole officer slash mafia boss who's making sure his little boy is falling in line. And I want to watch this exchange because it is terrifying and also incredibly telling. And we're going to get into the further crisis this week. It wasn't just obviously Elon Musk and Doggy getting access to even more and more agencies, or the confirmation of RFK Jr., which if you haven't talked enough about, go watch America Unhinged from last night with me and Wajahat Ali on Zateo. It is also about Eric Adams, and it is about the request from the DOJ to SDNY to drop all charges into Eric Adams's bribery, accepting foreign money in order to skirt construction law in New York City, so that the Turkish government could build a building. I mean, it's so amazing how little people can be bought off for. And in exchange, obviously, he got money. He also got free trips on Turkish Airlines. My guy was like, oh, I'm headed to the Caribbean, but first I got to go to Istanbul. First, I'm going to go to Istanbul. Like, it's just amazing. Like, not only are the rich, like, destroying the planet in their private jets, but you got these corrupt-ass mofos who are literally doing layovers 6 hours away. 6 hours, way more than that, right? We are going to just do a layover, an extra 40-hour trip over to Turkey. Now, this week, obviously Donald Trump and the DOJ are saying they're going to dismiss these charges. They still haven't quite found the attorney who's going to help them do it. In fact, we are currently in the process of the Department of Justice strong-arming attorneys in the Southern District of New York in order to drop the charges that they investigated, that they found evidence of, the bribery that they found evidence of. They want them to drop it. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But here is the reason that they want to drop charges for Mayor Eric Adams, is so that he can hand the undocumented people in New York City on a platter over to ICE.
To the Bronx. We interviewed a representative from the Bronx, and he said he talks to everyone on the street. Not one person wants that facility built. What's the status on that? Is there any way we
that's
can...
That's a great, you know what's interesting? If I go to anywhere in the city, when I had 220,000 migrants here, anywhere in the city, and ask who would like a shelter there, not one elected would raise a hand. And then you ask them the next question, how many of you went to Washington, D.C. under the previous administration and said, you need to stop this? I took 10 trips there. So you cannot represent your concern merely from the sterilized environment of your office space. They should have been with us saying, we need to stop this flow, and they weren't. And so the shelter...
You know what's so funny about this? This is him crapping all over Democrats, even though you'll hear he's still gonna run in the Democratic Party. Everybody supports Zoran in New York City and his run for mayor. But this is him saying that, like, oh, they didn't stop the flow, and I was, it's like who stopped the flow? What? Biden rolled out an effing app, CBP1, that was effectively cutting down this awful flow of undocumented migrants / asylum seekers. Oh, the food vendors, the people trying to flee the gang violence that your stupid ass war on drugs created. And then it's like, it's just so amazing. The arc of Eric Adams is so amazing that now he's being extorted into delivering the undocumented people in a sanctuary city to the Republican Party and to ICE. So here he is complaining. So he's kind of save his ass a little. And there's Homan like, yes, just like we rehearsed. Shit on the Dems.
Just have to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how long is the federal government going to be paying for the Roosevelt Hotel or any of these other sanctuary hotels?
We're continuing to close them down because of the job that we did. 180,000 out of our system. We closed down Floyd Bentonville.
So one at a time, closing them down?
No, more than one at a time. We have to close down as the population decrease. We put in place a 30 and 60-day plan. No one can stay long.
So this is Steve Doocy and all these other people that literally never set foot in actual New York City. They just get, flown either on helicopter or in a black car back to their homes in Jersey or Connecticut or wherever the F. Or they literally walk like 2 blocks and they've got a penthouse. I'm not even sure where they live. And they're like, oh, these migrants are being, can you believe it? It's like, okay, so what's the alternative? You want people to be in the streets? Because we've seen them in the streets. You don't want people to be in the streets, but you want them to be, okay, why don't you, give them a ride in your little chopper. Okay, buddy? But yeah, there's obviously more. This is where it gets good.
Because your president that you were working for and what worked for his reelection, let that happen and didn't take your phone calls when you asked for help.
100%.
He
I agree.
iced you out. So
right.
you're gonna have a decision.
That's a good point.
Right.
Well,
the days of
They're talking. So this, oh my God. I swear to God, the things I want to say about this man. So this is obviously he's being called out. He's like, oh yeah, you tried to contact President Biden, and he didn't even pick up your calls. And Eric Adams just like, okay, whatever you need to do, I'm doing the dance for you. Okay, sure, whatever you need me to say, it's fine. I just please drop my bribery charges, drop the charges.
Days of the federal government paying the migrant centers are over.
Good. Right. So, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, here comes like a literal bridge troll. Tom Homan. You can't say about this hotels. Yeah, these guys, these migrants, these brownies, they don't be in it. Why does he talk like a high school bully grew up to live under a bridge and say fee fi fo fum? Like who's crossing my bridge? Straight up, Tom Homan has the scariest voice. It is the scariest voice I've ever heard.
Yes.
You're going to run for re-election?
Yes.
Are you considering running as a Republican?
I'm going to run on the Democratic line. We petitioning to starting soon. Running as a Democrat. There's many Democrats like
for now, dog. For now, until he gets blown out and then he runs as an independent.
Look at those 78% that believe what we do, what ICE is doing about getting dangerous people out. I think that we have to get people out to vote. That is the problem.
But you're losing by about 25 points to former Governor Cuomo, who wants to be Mayor Cuomo.
Well, listen to this. I had another Andrew in my previous race. He was beating me by double digits in February, but we don't call Andrew Yang mayor. We call Eric Adams mayor. Never give up. New York is never give up. People had me gone months ago, but you know what? I'm sitting on your couch talking to Fox.
Wait. People had me gone months ago, but here I am sitting on your couch. Gee, I wonder why. I wonder what happened. What happened between you being gone because you were under federal bribery charges and you sitting on Fox and Friends' couch? Could it have something to do with the bridge troll sitting next to you? This fucking pimple come to life. This guy who's like just a Ren and Stimpy cartoon right over here, who's twisting your arm underneath the table and making sure that you fall in line, or he's not going to make your bribery charges disappear. They made your bribery charges disappear. They're still working on the legal logistics. No big deal. Just a bunch of lawyers are going to be resigning from the Justice Department in order to make way to clear this guy of his charges or dismiss them, right? They're not even really going to pardon him. They're just going to dismiss him. They can be brought up later. This dude is selling his entire soul for just face the music. It's not even the worst part yet.
City today talking about the new alliance between ICE and Adams. So thank you very much for
Thank
coming
you
and
so
Thank
telling
you.
us the news.
Make it a
Alliance
regular-
was never severe.
Yeah,
And
make it a
if he
regular
doesn't
thing.
come through,
Make it. You're up early anyway.
if he doesn't come through, I'll be back in New York City,
Right.
and we won't be sitting on the couch. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, "Where the hell is the agreement we came to?" So
Right.
And I want ICE to
believe we'll
deliver.
move
And I
forward.
want ICE to deliver. We're going to deliver for the safety of the people of this city.
We gotta rewatch that. So they're wrapping up. And Homan's gotta have this line. He's gotta have this line. If he doesn't deliver, I'm gonna be back in his office, up his butt. And then Adams is like, okay, I'm not that
It's
much your
this called a
son.
mega migrant shelter that's going to be
Yeah.
built in the Bronx. We interviewed a
Let's
representative.
go to the end.
So thank you.
Make it. You're up-
was never severe.
Yeah,
And
make it a
if he
regular
doesn't
thing.
come through,
Make it. You're up early anyway.
if he doesn't come through, I'll be back in New York City,
Right.
and we won't be sitting on the couch. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, "Where the hell is the agreement we came to?" So
Right.
And I want ICE to
believe we'll
deliver.
move
And I
forward.
want ICE to deliver. We're going to deliver.
And I want ICE to deliver. We're gonna deliver. He's trying to commandeer the comment. He's like, yeah, and you're gonna deliver, and we're gonna deliver safety for the American people, buddy. You gave it up. You gave up the whole. You gave it up. You think any New Yorker sees what you're doing and thinks that you got their back, that you care about safety? No. You see the stats of how many people are being deported, and half of them don't have any criminal records, and you think about safety? You want to let this deputized white nationalist run roughshod all over your people? No. And you want to get reelected in the Democratic Party? No. All right? And he just told you who's zooming who. He just told you who's whose son, all right? You're his son now. That's it. You're his son. You made this deal. You went to Mar-a-Lago, you begged and begged and begged, and this is what it is. I swear to God, is the timeline, the arc of this villain, man, the arc. Just face the music. Just face the bribery charges. You could still get reelected, but no. You had, and not only that, you agreed to sit next to Tom Homan and make it so it even more looks like it wasn't your idea. It's so more clear, so much clearer that it truly is extortion and blackmail, as if the memo from the DOJ didn't already read like extortion and blackmail. This happened last night, the Thursday night massacres, which has everything to do with the dropping of bribery charges by on Eric Adams. This is Steve Vladeck on his Substack writing about the DOJ and what they did this week. So I'm just going to read a little bit about what happened. So he said, on Monday night, basically, $100,000 worth of free plane tickets. $100,000, that's nothing. $100,000 is not. You can fight this. Fight it. You can fight it, or take whatever it is. You think they're gonna put you in jail? You think like face the music. Just face the music. No. You have to have your dignity also destroyed by going and running to Mar-a-Lago. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But anyway, on Monday, Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove, this is the memo, directed the New York federal prosecutors to drop the charges, offering a series of reasons that failed to persuade. But what's the most striking about the first Bove memo was footnote 1. Your office correctly noted on February 3rd, 2025, as Mr. Bove clearly stated to defense counsel during our meeting, the government is not offering to exchange dismissal of a criminal case for Adams' assistance on immigration enforcement. Just to repeat, the government is not offering to exchange dismissal of a criminal case for Adams's assistance on immigration enforcement. Now, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name, but Steve, this is a great piece. Steve writes, there's an old Twitter meme about how, quote, my not my not involved in human trafficking shirt has people asking a lot of questions already answered by my shirt, which is so funny. I don't know the meme, but my not involved in human trafficking shirt is people asking a lot of questions already answered by my shirt. Or if you prefer, the lady doth protest too much. That was my reaction to this footnote and the need to put it in writing that dropping the prosecution was not in exchange for assistance on immigration enforcement, and sure seemed to strongly imply that actually it was. Fast forward to a letter sent yesterday to Attorney General Bondi by Danielle Sassoon, the interim U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. Sassoon's letter is stunning, and the New York Times has helpfully annotated it to provide additional background. Not only did she vigorously defend the decision to indict Adams and the strength of the indictment, she also wrote that during the meeting that Bove's memo mentioned in footnote 1, Adams's lawyers had indeed repeatedly urged what amounted to a quid pro quo, indicating that Adams would be in a position to assist with the department's enforcement priorities only if the indictment were dismissed. So he went to Mar-a-Lago explicitly saying, this is who I can give to you. It's obviously it's my whole hole, but it's also a bunch of New Yorkers. It's New Yorkers that work hard to keep the city going. It's New Yorkers who feed you. It's New Yorkers who've absolutely prepared a gourmet meal for Eric Adams at his table of success. His table. All my haters will become my waiters. Bitch, you are such a waiter. You are a busboy, but you're not even good enough to be a busboy. The undocumented people that you want to deport, you could never work a single night in their shoes. You could never do that work. You're a fucking cop, man. So mad. The letter goes on to methodically pick apart all of the arguments the Bove memo made for dropping the case against Adams and requests that Bondi reconsider Bove's memo in light of the analysis. As Sassoon concluded, quote, I cannot fulfill my obligations effectively, lead my office in carrying out the department's priorities, or credibly represent the government before the courts if I seek to dismiss the Adams case on this record. If Bondi wouldn't reconsider, Sassoon offered her resignation as interim U.S. attorney. Now, remember, what they were asked to do was to drop these charges because, according to the Trump administration, they were politically motivated. It's all just the Biden crime family going after Eric Adams. Why? Why if SDNY, why if they are so politically corrupt, why would they bring bribery charges against a Democrat? If it is a Biden master plan, why would they bring bribery charges against what many Democratic pundits were calling the future of the Democratic Party? Somehow kill me, oh my God. They wouldn't. It makes no sense. And of course it makes no sense. But no one's going to break that down for the right wingers. No one's going to break that down. They don't understand that. It would have all been scandalous enough. But then there's the 8-page letter Bove sent to Sassoon today purporting to accept her resignation. So again, Sassoon's like, I'm not going to do this. I would resign. And accusing her of insubordination. As Bove writes, the decision is based on your choice to continue pursuing a politically motivated prosecution despite an express instruction to dismiss the case. You lost sight of the oath that you took when you started at the Department of Justice, and other things. So, no, she's very much keeping with her constitutional rights by continuing to bring these charges. Bove then noted that he's placing 2 of the assistant U.S. attorneys who assisted in the Adams case on administrative leave and is transferring the Adams case to the Justice Department's Public Integrity Section, which he explained will seek dismissal of the prosecution. Now, okay. Shortly thereafter, a top lawyer in that section and the acting head of the criminal division resigned, followed a few hours later by 3 other attorneys. In other words, 6 senior Justice Department lawyers resigned rather than carrying out Bove's directive to drop the Adams case. In case you're scoring at home, that's twice as many lawyers as were fired or resigned in the original Saturday Night Massacre, which was when Nixon wanted those investigating the Watergate scandal, the special prosecutor, to be fired. right? This is like, I mean, there's a reason that Roger Stone has a tattoo of Nixon on his back. He's obviously a psycho, but he loves Richard Nixon. These guys love corruption. Like, and last I checked, the Justice Department's public integrity section, which is full of a bunch of other lawyers, apparently Pam Bondi is sitting them down in a room and is like, which one of you is going to be the one to drop the Eric Adams case? Just wild. Just wild. Wild criminality. The other thing that Pam Bondi did, and this was fun, is she told that Apple and Google that they should ignore the Supreme Court as while they deliberate on the banning of TikTok, basically, and say that no, you can still have TikTok open on your app stores. You're not going to get punished for that. Which is like, I'm sorry, that just flies in the face of the court order. Like, that's just, you're going flying in the face of the Supreme Court. But she's like, no, it's fine. It's fine. You can do it. It's fine because one of our guys is going to buy it pretty soon and it's all good. It's just like the corruption against anything that is not going perfectly their own way. They already have the courts. Why do you want to what's going on? Anyway, insane. Anyway, then let's just do a palate cleanse and just go to Dan Scavino. What character is he in all this? Is he a Trump? He's a Trump official, but what is he? Just an advisor? I don't even know anymore. Is it doggy or not? Scavino posted this video that's showing that Donald Trump has framed in glass right outside the Oval Office a picture of himself, specifically his mugshot. There he is. If you are listening, it's right outside the door. You walk in, there's a bunch of president. Ooh, there's Ronald Reagan, and there is Trump's mugshot. They are gleeful criminals. It's gleeful. You don't look hard. You don't look cool. You look like a criminal who just got away with it. Like real mob boss level shit. We cannot be taken for a ride by these goons. I refuse. I absolutely refuse. A couple comments. Let's before we head back. I don't know if we have time. There's so much that I want to talk about. William McGregor, Eric Adams is Tom Homan's DEIA son. I mean, seriously, right? They're like, oh, we're gonna make you HUD secretary. We're gonna make you we just had a lot of white criminals in our cohort, white accused rapists / convicted rapists, a lot of Bob Menendez. Well, he's our Latino Democrat who's now cozying up to Donald Trump also for the same thing. The difference, it's just so funny. It's just so amazing to me that this is what they're doing. It's just they invite all criminals. I guess, Menendez doesn't have enough to offer them. Thank you, Neil, for the super chat. Have fancy coffee on me, $10. No, I shan't waste your precious money like that. And welcome, John Hartman and Robert Shooter over on Twitch. Thank you, Mike Boy for Mayor, for resubscribing. Appreciate you. I hope I'm seeing people on Twitch here. Godcat became a member. Jules gave out a sub. Thank you so much. East says, off topic, but malfunctioning sex toy sounds like a good official title for Boebert. Dude, I was gonna talk about how Lauren Boebert and Kid Rock were seen exiting a cab. I mean, should we do this? Or should we talk about how they want to strip Medicaid away from people? I don't have it in me to talk about that. I'm too mad. We'll talk about that on Tuesday. We'll talk about all the sad stuff on Tuesday. Give me half a second. Talk amongst yourselves. We got to get to an AMA real quick, but first, let's. God damn it! You don't let me do nothing over here. Dun 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 dun. Wong 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 wong. Hang on. I had a whole thing. I had a thing. We'll cut this. It's fine. Bobert and what's his face in Kid Rock? They was hanging out. All right, fine. Don't make me Google it. Okay, let's see. This is just from a couple days ago. Obviously, new video is showing. I mean, first of all, they left together from the Trump event. This is just so perfect. Lauren Boebert cozying up to Kid Rock at Trump event, which they reportedly left together in. Now, there's a video that's like not too fun, but it's like she's just sort of like dancing around. She's like dancing around him, and they're like talking, and she's like 4'2", no disrespect, but it's difficult. You know what I'm saying? She had to like shoot a gun in the air for him to like pay attention to her. And so she's like there, and it's just so pathetic. But apparently she was seen cozying up to Kid Rock at a Donald Trump event and later getting into a cab with the musician at 2:30 a.m., according obviously to Page Six. Guys, TMZ initially reported on the pair chatting it up at the day after the January 20th inauguration event when the 54-year-old Rock and 38-year-old Boebert were seen. I can't believe that's like, oh, my last name's Rock. Mr. Rock? Mr. Kid, sir? I love how Kid Rock's name like sounded cool for half a second, and now it just sounds like a compilation of, just like after school songs. Kid Rock. Lauren was totally transfixed by the rock star, yapping away, doing a little dance, clapping like she was in the front row. Basically giving Kid Rock all the hype he needed, TMZ noted. The site said Boebert was fangirling over Rock. No, I don't think so. Nobody's fangirling over Rock. In a new report, Page Six detailed how the two not only chatted but left in a cab from Washington, D.C. together. A report did not detail where they headed or their next stop or if they stayed together. Yeah, they're not going to. I wish they would chase them like Princess Diana, but Boebert only wishes that she was like Lady Diana. But if she could be chased into a tunnel and, whatever happens from there, that's on God, I would really appreciate that. That would be sick for me specifically. Anyway, it's all bad, guys. We'll talk about Medicaid on Tuesday. This new budget is coming down, and it is I don't even know why they're trying to pass budgets anymore. I guess they have to keep the government open, but you're like, is anything that they're doing legal anyway? No, it's not. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for supporting the show. You can become a patron, patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Let's go do the AMA right now. Got some great questions. You can become a patron and appreciate all those who have. And I will see you on Tuesday. Paris Marks of Tech Won't Save Us. Oh my God, I'm so excited to talk to them. I'm so excited. Paris obviously has been tracking Elon for a very long time, been tracking all the crypto and the AI bros for many, many, many years. I am curious where Paris is at now and, what words of wisdom he has for us. So stay tuned for that on Tuesday. And remember, Tuesday nights and Thursday nights, 5 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, or excuse me, the other way around, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. America Unhinged. Last night's episode was great. We talked about RFK Jr. We talked to Dr. Kavita Patel all about what we can do to protect ourselves and one another when it comes to having RFK Jr. in the head of HHS as measles ravages Texas. But until next time, have a great weekend. Happy Valentine's Day. Bye-bye.